Podcast fam, David Patterson is a pastor of a church that meets in the Hale Village Center, which is where he and his wife, Jan Patterson, lived for 15 years. They felt that there was a need to have a place for people to gather with friends, meet a neighbor for coffee, or just get some work done. Jan had been working at the Chamber of Commerce for 8 years when they decided to take the plunge and open Patticakes in the Hale Village Center in 2011. In 2020, they opened their second location in the Tioga Town Center. Today, they have 29 employees and are thriving at both of their locations. Hear why these two are all about coffee, cupcakes, and community in today's episode 166 of the WHOA GNV podcast. You are listening to WHOA Podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV Podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. I am your host, Collin, and today, you guys, I want to give special love to my friends over at Liquid Creative Studios. Those of you who have been long-time listeners know that Sarah Lentz, who works with our team, has been gone all summer long. You also probably know that I'm currently, let me try to count these off. I'm the general manager. I'm the HR department. I am the customer service manager. I'm the head janitor over at New Scooters for Less right now. So I barely had enough time to record this show, let alone prep it for the interwebs. So the team at Liquid Creative has been awesome. They stepped up big time to help me upload and prep all of the content going out to make sure that it's going out on time. It's a really big job. I don't think you really understand how big it is until you start doing it, and I think they probably regret it a little bit. Like, oh yeah, we'll help you, no problem. So I just want to give them a lot of love for helping us. And so many thanks to Liquid Creative for all of their help. Be sure to check them out at liquidcreativestudio.com. Their team also writes the incredible articles and show summaries on a ton of our guests in the business report. So be sure to check out those articles by visiting GainesvilleBizReport.com. Again, that's GainesvilleBiz, B-I-Z, report.com. So much love to Liquid Creative Studios for continuing to help us get these out on the interwebs. Appreciate you guys for everything that you did for me this summer. And you guys, I'm excited for this episode. Today on the show, we have Jan and David Patterson, owners of Patticakes, a coffee and cupcake shop with not one, but two locations right here in Gainesville, Florida, baby. You guys, welcome to my show.
Thanks for having us. This is fun.
My pleasure. I'm excited to dive into this story a little bit. So let's start there. Like, tell me how you guys started Patticakes and even kind of like what got you to Gainesville. Are you guys from Gainesville? Like, give it to me.
We're not from Gainesville. We're actually both Atlanta natives.
Okay.
We were high school sweethearts. We've been married 41 and a half years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we came to Gainesville in 1987 for his work. And he was working, I don't know if you may be too young to remember the battery plant that was off of 441.
Yeah, so I didn't get to Gainesville until 2000.
Okay.
So that's definitely before my time.
It was on its way out by then. So anyway.
It was still going, but it was definitely on its last breath by then. That's when I ended up leaving. So
yeah, so it was Energizer.
But that's why you guys came to Gainesville.
That's what brought us to Gainesville.
All right.
Also what sent us away for 4 years because the plant closed and he took another job back in Atlanta.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer, and I worked on designing equipment, automation equipment and stuff, and robotics, and lots of cool things. And anyway, so that's what brought us here.
Side note, he has a patent, which I think is super cool.
Yeah?
On a robot arm. But anyway,
okay.
I digress. That's for another podcast.
I like guys like okay.
Anyway, so then we were in Atlanta, and he started going to seminary just to learn, and got a call from God to come down here and back here and plant a church. So that was in 2005 that we moved back here. So we were gone for a little over 4 years and came back, and we've been here ever since. And then we opened Patticakes in 2011, the first one in the Hale Village Center. We were living in the Village Center and had our church there. It meets in the Village Center, and there just seemed like a lack of a place for people to gather that wasn't a restaurant, where people could come and hang out and not be rushed and it not be loud. They could, have a meeting for work or have a Bible study or a book club or mom's, getting coffee, whatever. So we just felt like we were lacking some place that people could connect. Like it's a very transient, people move in and out a lot, so people don't know their neighbors. So we wanted people to meet their neighbors. And so we're like, okay, let's do this. Not a lot of forethought, not a lot of planning, no 5-year plan, no savings.
Just kind of out of the blue?
We had thought about it. We'd marinated on it for a few years. Our daughter had worked in college and then right out of college for a company in Atlanta that was a coffee company that was working with Kenyan coffee growers. And we learned that coffee's like an amazing natural resource in the countries that can grow it, and it can really help their economy. So anyway, so we got interested in coffee that way. Then there was the cupcake trend, and
so were you just jumping on trends?
Like, yeah. Our daughter was like, she was the first one in our family to have an iPhone, and so everywhere we go, she was like, oh, let's find some cupcakes. And so we're like, oh, these two things seem great together. And so we thought, well, we'll do this. And then a space opened up, and we had no business plan. We still don't have a business plan. And
well, more than none.
So a spot opened up in the Village Center. We jumped on it and said, okay, let's do this. Like we opened like 5 hours a day. We had 3 employees, and it just grew. Like people were like, wait, why are you closing so early? We want to come. And so then, we quickly added another employee and added hours, and it just grew. Like people wanted it, and we couldn't have imagined that it would have been that successful and popular with people. So yeah, people are addicted, especially to our red velvet cupcake.
That's awesome.
I think one thing you missed a little bit is she was working at the Chamber of Commerce here, and so you were working around a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think you had a little bit of a bug. I remember us talking about that, and so in this whole thing about, boy, it'd be nice if we had a coffee shop. Everybody's looking for that third place, right? And so coffee shops kind of have become that third place for a lot of people, and so I have a day job, so it wasn't going to be me jumping in there. So she had a little bit more of an interest in doing that than continuing with the chamber stuff. So,
well, I worked for the chamber for 8 years. The second time we lived in Gainesville, the first time we lived here, I worked there 4 years. So 12 years at the chamber, and loved that job. I really loved that job. I was the director of the Leadership Gainesville program, and that afforded me a lot of contacts. And I think that's why we had such great initial success, was because those people, Gainesville is such a great community to support its own. And so that community really came around us and helped us, get the word out. And we obviously had zero marketing budget. So it was word of mouth and social media. And so that community really came around us and helped us get the word out and grow. And so.
And I'll put a little plug into the church community.
And the church, absolutely.
Not just our own church, which supported us, but I know a lot of pastors in the area.
What's the church?
It's called River Cross Church.
Okay.
And it meets right in the town center of the Hell Village Center. And
you've been doing that for how long?
We started there, so 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
Yeah, right when we moved back 2005.
Oh, okay.
And
so are you still doing the engineering stuff?
Had like 20 people. No.
So that was your primary, like being an engineer was your primary form of, living, right? For how long?
Well, I went to Georgia Tech, graduated in 83, and up until 2005. That was it.
So it was like really when you started the church is when everything shifted? Mm-hmm. There was no juggling both of those things.
This is his first preacher job.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. We just sort of sold.
Can you tell me a little bit about that from being in Atlanta and feeling this call to come back to Gainesville and plant a church. That's a pretty big, loud, hey, I want you to do this from God.
Yeah.
God speaking into your life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways we talk about, this is what I felt was my calling and stuff. You hear that at least in the church world. And but for me, it was, I just couldn't let it go. I kept trying to say no. And I mean, it was over a period of close to a year that I was like, no, that's not it. But it just kept happening and it kept coming. And then...
in what way?
Well, one, just my... so back in my engineering days, let's just go back real quickly. I had a passion for designing equipment and stuff, and I loved it. And I started losing my passion for the business world. And this passion started shifting into the church world. And I just had this passion and so I had been away from the church. Actually, when we were in Gainesville, we didn't go to church for most of the time. And I had this passion for, there's a lot of people out there that would go to a church if they just knew that there was a place that they wouldn't be judged and yelled at and all kinds of things that I had in my mind about church. And so we're an incredibly simple, laid back church. And most of the people that go to our church were in one way or another not disenfranchised with the church, with the organized church. We don't have a big show. We don't do a lot of get you excited type of thing. We just say, hey, God's very important and eternity's very important, and let's just let's meet and become a community together and stuff. And so we got close to around 200 and 250 people that that's kind of their story.
Was there something that really
back to the calling? I'm sorry, I kind of dropped off. So but that passion to help reach those people, because I just didn't feel like the churches I'd been involved with were. And I don't want to say that we're so super different, but it's just that we have this sort of different approach to the way that we look at it. And so that passion just kept on for like over a year. I just kept hearing, I felt like the Lord saying, I want you to go and start this. So now fast forward to Thanksgiving of 2004. We were down, her parents used to live in Ocala, and I talked to somebody that I knew here in Gainesville that was a part of the church that we had been in. And as we got talking, it turned out that there was a group of people that actually wanted to start a church, but they didn't have a pastor. And so we began talking, and it just seemed like God sort of put all that together real quickly. And so here we were 6 months later. Let's sell everything and pack up the bags and go down and see what this is all about.
All right, so Jan, how did that go?
I kept saying, but you were just going to seminary to learn.
to learn. She keeps using air quotes, everybody. To learn.
Well, but that was true.
Yeah, so that was Thanksgiving. He had that conversation of 2004, and we had our first service in February of 2005, which, as I'm thinking about it, sounds a little bit like how we started our business. Like we don't think long and hard. We hear God and we jump in, so not that we're, super wholly obedient people, but I'm just sort of put that together. I
wonder if that's a trend with faith-based entrepreneurs. It's just like having this, I know God's calling me to do this. He's got this. He'll figure it out. Let me go. I'll do it. No. So I wonder if it's that versus the people who.
Because planting a church, most people who plant a church spend a long time building a core group and researching, demographics and all that sort of stuff, which we didn't do. We just we knew this town and we loved this town, and so that was enough. But then I think opening Patticakes was so much a part of our faith that I think we did kind of feel like, we're supposed to do this, and we did just jump in.
And so that was 2011, and you've been, you've had the church since 2005. So, I mean, obviously, you said your background, working with the chamber, definitely helps with the connections, and you have the church. So, I mean, was it, instant community when it came to Patticakes?
Pretty instant.
Yeah.
I look back at the pictures of our ribbon cutting when we opened, and all of so many of my chamber friends that were there, Leadership Gainesville friends that were there, and cheering us on and kept coming back. And so, but then also in those same pictures is our church family.
Yeah.
So
very cool. And so now, go ahead.
I would just say one of the things that we've maybe evolved into, I don't know that we were very definitive about it at the beginning, but we definitely are much more this way now, is we're very divided in our task and responsibilities, and so when you see Patticakes, this is Jan. She's had the vision for the way it looks, how it's presented, how we treat customers, how we treat employees. She's done great at all of that. I'm a very business oriented person, even though I'm a pastor. I still have a very strong business knowledge and understanding and stuff, and so follow the books and look at trends and hold her back when she wants to spend money, that kind of thing. And so for the first 2 to 3 years, it was not real profitable. I mean, it was holding its own, but it definitely wasn't. I mean, we definitely went through some months, particularly in the summer, where it was, okay, we got to put a little bit more money into this, and we took on some debt, and it took us a little while to kind of navigate through some of that, but. Somewhere in the 2 to 3 year range, we started seeing a consistent, profitable performance from the village, and so that was that kind of was the turning point where we were like, okay, this is now going to continue on, because
that was 3 years later, or like
probably close to the 3 year mark, but. The first couple of years, there's still maybe a little, and we had a very unique situation. The space we were taking over was kind of in a transition, and so we had it a little less expensive than it turned out to be, and so a lot of things sort of lined up for us to be able to hobble along a little bit. But I think as her and her team really began to develop the culture that was there. And now you start, for us anyway, I think you've got to have a core business group of people that are coming in regularly, at least once a week, in order for it to be a sustainable thing. If you're relying on that one-time customer to come every few months or whatever, it's really, really hard to do that in a coffee shop situation. I mean, we're talking about, the average ticket price is $7-8 or, whatever. Right. So you can't. You can't rely on just getting new customers all the time. And so it took, I think, 2 to 3 years to get that initial core of faithful customers coming to us. And again, that's her. She makes people feel special when they come in the door. and our employees are trained to do that. They're trained to get to know the customers. If they have an opportunity to talk to the customers, that's fine. The dishes can wait. That kind of attitude has always been there. And so it took a few years to kind of, I don't know if you know about the Village Center, but it's kind of tucked away off by itself, and you didn't have to do that. Now, fast forward to when we started Tioga, it already had that walking traffic, that knowledge of where it was. We opened the doors, and now customers were ready to be loyal right off the bat. We didn't have to put in the hours and stuff to kind of develop it as much. Now, it continues to grow just like the Village does, but it had an initial core group of loyal customers pretty fast.
So was that knowing that you had that already, is that like what led to the decision to open up that location? Like what made you guys want to do that several years later?
Do you know Nick Banks?
I do. He's like, oh my gosh, this will be a great place for Patticakes. Get in here.
If I can, in the middle of our history between the Village and the current very successful town of Tioga, we had another business, another location on the Bo Diddley Plaza for a few years. Nick got us into that one. And, he opened the door for us, and then we sold the city on ourselves. Anyway, lovely building, just a lot of things that didn't make it economically successful. We had a great team, had great customers, it didn't make money. And there's a saying in business that if you're going to fail, you should fail quickly. And we should have failed more quickly, and that was my fault. I was very sentimentally attached to the place and the employees, and he, being the books person, was like, this isn't working. So
how long did it take you to make that decision?
A year.
Well, things were moving in the right direction for the first year, but then after the first year, we could see a decline starting to happen. I say decline. It was not increasing in the pace that it needed to, and it just had sort of plateaued off, and even began to trail off a little bit. Some of that was some competition downtown. We had terrible Wi-Fi. The city didn't do a very good job of putting in infrastructure for us. And so a lot of our customers were going to places where they could actually get Wi-Fi that was decent. But I think one of the big things too is we just didn't have a lot of inside seating. And if you were to track our business revenue with the almanac, you would have seen great days, great sales performance, bad days, terrible. And so Gainesville has a lot of good days, but not that many great days. And so, but the outside seating around the plaza was fantastic. And so it'd be flooded with people. But on those bad days, man, we were just sitting there twiddling our thumbs. And so that's a very simplified version of some of the systemic problems that we were faced with. And I recognized that about as we were approaching year 2. I started to realize that was happening. And that's when I told her, and I said, we need to really try to figure out an exit strategy. And we had a lease problem, our lease situation we had to work through, and some other things. So it was not easy, but finally, after about 3.5 years, we were able to do that.
Can you give us some insight into how you handled that? Because I got to think that, look, a lot of businesses have struggled with COVID. There's a lot of people who are, unfortunately closing down locations or closing down their businesses, and maybe they're in a 5-year lease, but they're only on year 2. I think that could be very valuable as to like how you guys approach that.
Well, again, I think it's an analysis. You have to analyze what the business is doing and recognize that there's reasons behind why it was plateauing and starting to trail off. And,
For sure.
And then as I started realizing this weather condition situation, and then you couple that with the problems of parking down there and the Wi-Fi problems that, again, are systemic problems, you start realizing that these things are not things you're going to overcome. And so when you identify that and you say, well, we can't enlarge the building, we can't solve the parking problems. I talked with the city plenty of times about there's a 2-hour parking limit down there that they don't enforce. And so everybody comes and fills up the parking spaces. So you don't have any parking. And then the weather, there's definitely, as much as my day job, I should be praying for good weather. I guess
yeah.
Maybe I have. Some people think I have a little more influence in that than I do.
That's funny.
It didn't play out quite that well. So for the downtown, but looking back on it, if we had understood going into it that we needed to have more seating space, we probably in the design phase of the building probably could have made some adjustments. But by this time, everything was locked in, and there really wasn't any way to grow it.
So is the property the city's?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so did you have to negotiate like a buyout of the lease? Like
we had to, yeah. So there were some clauses in there for us to be able to get out of the lease, but there was also some clauses in there not clauses, there was conversation that we had with them, and we were able to actually get someone to sublease from us.
Okay.
And so, but unfortunately, right after that sublease hit is when COVID hit. Because that happened in 2019. And so they were just getting up and going, and then COVID hit, and
they had to close up too.
It crippled them. It would have definitely crippled us too. But thankfully we're able to again talk through that, and the city had some financial support from the federal government for things like that to happen, and so fortunately we were able to step aside. But it was very tricky to deal with that. But again, your question about how, I think you have to be realistic in analyzing what's happening and understand, are the problems that are causing this things that you could do anything about? And if they are, how much are they going to cost? Because sometimes it could be, we can fix it, but it's, like for instance, the internet problem. Mm-hmm. We could have paid $10,000 to Grucom and they would have brought us a fiber optic line in. Well, we didn't have $10,000 to put into a fiber optic line. So that was not a economical solution to the problem, to that particular problem. So anyway, that's kind of my view on it. But thankfully, like I said, we were able to get out of it. And then we were kind of still hurting from that. And I don't know if you want to tell the story, but Nick called her and said, hey,
got another location.
I got another.
That's why I said he was in today, by the way. He said,
Nick's got 5 locations for you, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
This is
10 more on the list.
Yeah, we're coming.
So he got in touch with me again, and he says, so Starbucks is moving out of the Tioga Town Center, and would you be interested? And I laughed, and I was like,
No way.
He'll never go for it. David will never go for this.
I love it.
And I really don't want to either. And so we sat down and talked to him, and we talked to other people that are involved at Tioga, and I don't know. We did it. We said somehow.
Well, tell him you came to me and
yes.
said, she said, she came to me and said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but she said, I know you're not going to want to do this, but I'm going to tell you anyway, or something like that. And I said, what are you talking about? And then that's what she told me. And my reaction to her was surprising to you, right?
Yeah. He was like,
That's a great idea.
yeah.
Well, I said, wait a minute, let's not throw it out. And here's the simple reason. All the problems that we had in the downtown were not problems out there. And also, the community out there is very much like the community in the Hale Village Center. Right. So,
from a model standpoint, it made sense.
It's a much better match than what we were trying to do downtown. Downtown was it went against a lot of the things not against, but it was a different environment and different setup than what we were used to.
I mean, my first question would have been like, well, what's happening to Starbucks?
Well, we knew that they were going to all drive-through models.
So they're basically getting away from that.
They had already started building down, in Jonesville.
Oh, so is there another one down there now?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been.
So they'd already started building that. They hadn't even actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying all this, exited their lease when we started talking to Tioga. But clearly they weren't going to have, like, the other shop's not even a mile away. So
I don't think it was a big secret. Starbucks 15 years ago came out and said they're emphasizing drive-through models. Just like, Chick-fil-A said, we're going to go to standalone instead of mall Chick-fil-A's. They made that decision. Well, Starbucks did kind of a similar thing in saying we're going to do drive-throughs. But if you look around Gainesville, all over Gainesville on the northwest side of Hunter's Crossing,
they built one out there.
They moved that one and built one.
Even this one here on 13th.
Exactly.
Same
Which
thing.
That was such a nice
Which, they're probably getting to the point because they probably own the property too.
Yeah.
They're buying the property, building, and then they own the property.
Most of these, I think they were leasing, just like they were at Tioga. They had
But the new ones,
yes.
The new ones, they're probably going away from the leases that they had and other.
I think you're right.
And then owning their own, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm sure it is, but I can tell you their strategy is simple. They want to pump out lattes and hand them out the window and get on your way. And that's great. It's if your name's Starbucks, you can do that all day long, and that's why there's long lines at it. If you're Patticakes, we wouldn't have that kind of line there anyway. But we're more about wanting the community side. We want to get to know you,
right?
And so I think there's just a different approach to that. But we're obviously not going to generate the revenues that a Starbucks is. I guarantee you their revenue per hour is consistently higher than ours. Whatever it is, even though we sell a few more products, I'm sure that they're probably, when you just look at a Starbucks, you go in, you see how populated it is, how busy it is. You go, wow, this is really crank out. You can go into either one of our stores at certain times of the day and not see anybody there for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I would say, complete outside perspective, I feel like Starbucks says, I would say, like, what you guys have now is kind of what Starbucks used to be, right? And then with growth and with scale, it becomes, and like shareholders, right? Like, they're not private, like, so this trying to meet these particular demands and goals and shareholder goals and that kind of thing. I'm sure it has a huge impact on that. They try to keep the feel, right?
Right.
They try to have, like, obviously it's not franchise, but like that franchise type feel, every single one looks and operates the same, right? But what you guys have really created is community. That's what you're going for. Like you said, you want the same people to come in every week, and you really count on those people coming in all of the time. So it's completely different, but we're also talking like, small business to
small
corporate,
local, yeah,
which people like. That's one of the reasons, like, why we wanted to do this show is because like we love small business. We love the local mom and pop shops. Like, that's what we love. So it's
Yeah.
Corporate.
Well, and
there's a need for corporate stuff out there,
sure,
but
sure. And we've always said without Starbucks, there wouldn't be a Patticakes.
Interesting.
Like I never would have had a latte if Starbucks wasn't so available. They opened the one downtown. I was working at the chamber. We were renting space in the Sun Center at the time, and they opened that one, there on the corner by the Hippodrome.
Yeah.
And man, I was there, 3 times a week till he started saying, look at all these credit card charges to Starbucks. But anyway, so that was my first experience with a coffee shop, with a latte, like not drip coffee. And I was like, this is really good. So that's when I first started my journey into like enjoying something besides drip coffee. So we've said that a lot. Without Starbucks, we wouldn't have, they opened the whole world's eyes to other drinks besides drip coffee.
So I mean, with like going through COVID and everything, I mean, obviously that had to be a huge.
What is that? What are you talking about?
Exactly. So I mean, the importance of community to get through something like that, right?
Oh man, our customers were so generous. So we never closed.
Okay.
We reduced our hours. We had to increase staff to follow all the new protocols that we had implemented. But our customers showed up and tipped like crazy. Mm-hmm. And it really helped our employees, the ones that were getting fewer hours, to like really amp up their pay because the tips were incredible. Like our community was incredibly generous during that time. They were, when we went to masks, they were 99% very supportive and thanking us for the fact that they felt safe coming in. And they said, when you can have us back inside, we'll be back. And they came back and have continued to be supportive. And we picked up a lot of new customers in Hale because we had not opened Tioga.
When did Tioga open?
Halloween of 2020.
Okay.
October 31st.
So I kind of want to hear this whole mentality of, there's a pandemic happening. Let's start another.
Let's open a new business.
Yeah, were you guys even concerned about, COVID and its impact and, jumping into something like that?
Sure.
During that time?
Sure. But again,
I feel like most people probably would have said, okay, I like it, but like, let me kind of see how this is going to play out.
We didn't want to miss the opportunity, first of all, because someone was going to snap up that location. If it wasn't us, it was going to be someone, and we did not want to miss that.
Okay.
Also, we had done okay, like during the pandemic. The worst of it, like I said, we never closed. We went to, we got an app so we could do curbside delivery. One customer was coming in at a time, all those things, and they were all great about it. So we, it was okay. Like we did okay. We weren't.
A really interesting side to this too. She's right. I mean, if you look at month by month and you compare year to year, which is what I do all the time, and March and April were not great. March when it hit, and then April when we were trying to figure out what was going on. She and the team put together the app, and actually it was our son who was a big part of making the app, and started doing this curbside service and everything. And before you know it, May actually was pretty close equivalent to what May of 2019 was.
Awesome.
And then we went into the summer and we saw June, July, and August actually were better than they were in 2019 in 2020. So there was, from an analytical standpoint, the increases there. And now,
is that from the pivot, from the convenience?
Well, first of all, they made it possible for it to happen. But secondly, there were a couple of coffee shops that closed down.
Okay.
Which, we don't like to see anybody go out of business, but they did. And so their customers started coming. And believe it or not, Starbucks shut down ahead of this. They shut down in March. And so, which was this incredible blessing that came about because a number of people started coming from Tioga to us hearing that we were open. And so some of the new customers we started, and then we told them, by the way, we're going to go over there. They said, oh, really? So now they were already familiar with us because they had been sort of forced to come to us because Starbucks had closed down. So we had this built in. And so when we went in November or end of October, if you look at November, we actually had a decrease in Hale because in the Village Center, because about 10% of that business had relocated over to Tioga, which was great because we needed that core over there. But I mean, it wasn't anything planned. It just happened that way. But of course, all of that's recovered and settled out and everything since then. But yeah, we actually had a nice little boost, and you could definitely say at least 10 to 20% of that boost was because of other businesses being closed around us that kind of pushed some business our way.
Another reason is people were lonely. Like people were bored. They were working from home. They weren't seeing other humans other than, on their computer screen. And we were friendly faces for them to come and see, the people that they already knew and were familiar with. So I think that was a lot of it too. People wanted to go somewhere. They would like peek around in the door and they'd go, "You're open? Like, can we come in?" And so that was a big part of it. Again, it's because we've always been about building community. People were like, "Oh, there's my people. I can go see them." And, they couldn't hang out because we couldn't have indoor seating, but they were just happy to see someone that wasn't on a computer screen. So I think that was a big part of it too.
That's awesome. So where are we going now? I mean, is third location in the works, or is it?
No, it is not.
Like, no.
So do you hear me, Nick Banks? No, I'm turning 60 in November, and he's 61. Sorry.
How long you guys been married?
41 and a half years. Anyway, so we were super young when we got married, obviously. But, we're kind of on the other side of things. Like, I love this, but I'm really happy with what I've got with these two locations. It keeps me real busy. I have amazing employees. The people managing each location are amazing. And we're in a really good place. And I just kind of want to, keep it really healthy and grow what we've got. But, we've learned a lot, and I want to have time to apply that. I listened
to... I'm sorry. There really in Gainesville are only two locations that are like what we're in between the town center in Tioga and the village center in Hale. And it's what works for us. And so trying to find where that would be someplace else, which I don't think exists, would not probably work that great for us. So that's another sort of simple answer to it.
Yeah.
Not to say that rolling up your sleeves and getting after it and all that kind of stuff is, but the other thing is, and this is another pat on her back, she's involved in both of those locations. I mean, at some point you can't be involved that much in how many locations. And so she's already, getting to the point where it can be kind of tiring. Now we've got some great people and that's wonderful, but still she's there encouraging them, supporting them, loving on the customers. Our regular customers at both locations know her really well.
I'm scooping ice cream. I'm pulling shots. I mean, so COVID is rearing its ugly head again, as you know. So we're now back to that point where either an employee has it or they've been exposed and they're having a quarantine. A majority of the staff is vaccinated, but still you can get it. So we're kind of back there. So today was one of those days that I was, up early and I had to go cover for, people who were quarantining. So, we're kind of back to that stage. So I had listened to one of your podcasts when you were talking to Paul and Kristen Prevette, and you said, are you to the point of working on the business, or are you still working in the business? Mm-hmm. And I want to work on it.
Yeah.
I want to get to that place to work on it and not so much in it. And I think you shared that that's kind of where you were as well. Mm-hmm. And so, we're getting there. Well, if we can have no more pandemics, we could get there. But it's like, I kind of want to get to that point, now I understand what our customers want, what our lane is, and the importance of staying in our lane. And we're really good at it. Yeah. So I want to enjoy that for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that we started with here was talking about how important local businesses are to a community, and we're thankful. Gainesville really loves to support local businesses, we've found. Mm-hmm. But if you keep growing, you no longer keep your local business quite as strong, Mm-hmm. It becomes a little watered down. Yeah. And so that's I think another way of looking at it. But
I'm so fascinated by, like, following God's calling, right? Like when he says to do this and you listen and you do it, right? Even in that show, like Kristen had asked me, okay, like, so, when you ask God things like, does he answer? And I was and at first I said no. And I was like, well, he does, but in ways that it's not like me hearing him speak directly into my ear, right? And I think that's the thing, because, like, I mean, what's so crazy? And I know I've done in the John Spence episode, I got very transparent, like talking about everything that's happened over the last year and a half, and even today, I was reviewing the numbers for July, and I'm like, man, like, it's crazy because I had put all of this out there, all of these options, and I really wanted to see what was going to play out. And then finally I get to that point where, in March, April, I'm like, okay, God, I get it. I trust you. I don't know why, but it's very apparent that none of these other options are playing out. This is what you want me to do. I don't really understand it, but I'm going to do it. And man, I think we're gonna have the best year we've ever had. I mean, I'm like looking at the numbers, and I'm like, oh my God, we had the best June we've ever had, ever.
And June
the best
should not
July.
be a good month.
I had the best July we've ever
in
had.
Gainesville. That's awesome.
And I'm like, this is great. And like, I think it just goes to show when you do turn it all over and you do just kind of surrender everything, how God will work, because I mean, up like through March, we were making no money. Like, we were living on the PPP. Wow. And I ain't even told my team, I'm like, we have enough PPP to get through the end of April. And it was like getting to the end of April and then realizing, okay, none of this is playing out. This is what I feel like I'm being called to do. I'm going to get on the showroom floor, April, May, well, June, like, those months are not typical profitable months for us. They're kind of like the preparation months for August, which is, I mean, ever since I made that, the surrender. I mean, we've made money every month, even in months that are typically not profitable. And I'm like,
I love that so much.
Okay, well, you obviously know what you're doing up there. Let me just get out of your way.
He does. It's amazing.
Yeah, so it's going to be, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's going to be super interesting to see how everything plays out, because, I want to continue doing these, doing these interviews. I want to continue doing this. But I'm like, okay, well, if I got to be on the showroom floor from 9:30 to 5:30 and do these at 7:30 at night, that's what I'll do, if that's what it means, So it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. But I appreciate you guys coming on and telling your story. It's super interesting to hear it, and I wish you the most success. And I can't wait to see the third location pop up when she's over here saying, oh, it's never going to happen. And we'll see it pop up. And
well, it's just like you said, though. I mean, if we feel like that's where the Lord's calling us,
you'll do it. You're going to listen.
I mean, yeah.
Because I was saying no to yoga, and he was saying.
So, yeah, I mean, you always have to hold everything, your plans, with open hands if the Lord's involved. And it's one of the things that I preach all the time. And so if I don't listen to it, what's the point? I mean, you got to walk the talk,
Yeah.
Collin, if you've gotten me into a third location.
No. Open hands. The answer is no.
When the episode releases and you start getting text messages, I've got the location for you.
Yeah, here we go. It'll be Nick Banks.
Tell our audience where they can connect with you, where they can find you guys. Like, where? So obviously we said where the locations are located, but I mean, website. It sounds like you have an app as well.
Right. So if you go on the App Store, look up Patticakes. Look for our little icon that's a cupcake and a cup of coffee. And then we're very active on Instagram, Patticakes GNV. Also on Facebook. Everything's rolled into one on the Instagram. We have separate accounts for the two locations on Facebook. Our website is patticakesgnv.com. And I think that's it. I mean, we probably need to get into TikTok, but we're not there yet.
Rivercrosschurch.com.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
All one word.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We don't do as much social.
Fancy.
We don't do a lot of social.
It's very laid back, very easy.
Very easy. And usually you'll find me hanging out over in the village center anyway. So most of the time that's where people bump into me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, you guys, thank you so much for coming in. And James Leitner, who sets all of this up, you guys, mad love to him. Thanks, James, for all of your hard work. And podcast fan, remember that you can get links to all of our sponsors in the show notes. So definitely, hit up the sponsors that make this episode possible. All of their contact information will be in the show notes as well. And I'm talking about Patticakes. We'll have links to their stuff as well. And of course, all of the sponsors are at whoagnv.com/sponsors. So please support these businesses that make this show possible. And when you do, be sure to say, I heard you on the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go,
whoa.
whoa. We will see you later. Bye.